Hey everybody. While we wait for Jack to find his way here from the West Coast with his new Tom Rebecca bass, which we're excited to see. Yeah, we're excited to see him too, but the bass is going to be something else. We have a couple of cool things coming up from the vault. 2014. It's a phone interview with me and Grace. Never been heard before. Well, unless you were here, of course. Grace is always entertaining, I don't need to tell you, so that's going to be fun to revisit for me, first time for you. And from 2015, I did some really long interviews for the Janis Joplin Little Girl Blue PBS documentary. They didn't use any of my stuff. We don't need to get into that now, but it's cool stuff. So you'll get to hear those two interviews. Me on Janis, me with Grace, and it'll be salt and peppered with some acoustic songs of me playing and singing. So please join us, and I will be on the feed as always when I'm not playing.
You and Janis met in the coffeehouse scene. Which coffeehouses did you frequent?
Well, when I first moved to San Jose in '62, in the beginning there was one coffee house in San Jose. It was on First Street. It was called the Coffee Gallery. And the first weekend I was there, that's where I met Janis and, uh, and Jerry and Steve Talbot and a whole bunch of the regulars at that point. Subsequently, later on, there was another coffee house. I don't remember the name of it, but there was the Tangent in Palo Alto also. But down the peninsula, those are the only two that I remember.
Can you describe Janis the first time you saw her? What was your initial impression of her?
Well, if you think that the first time that I saw Janis Joplin was the first weekend that I was in the Santa Clara, San Jose area, I met her at the offstage. She was wearing jeans and a work shirt, and I remember thinking at the time, actually not thinking much about it at all until I heard her sing. And as soon as I heard her sing, I knew that there was something really special going on there.
What was her relationship with her family and Texas at the time?
Janis and I never spoke much about her family. When I first met her, I didn't even really know that she was from Texas. I learned that later on. Between her and me, it was always about the music. And when I heard her sing and she heard me play, and in that moment, that's what was going on, just the music.
Can you describe what the coffee scene was like in the early 1960s in San Francisco?
Now, coming from D.C., I just come from the D.C. area, and before that I spent some time in New York. And I really didn't know what to expect, what's going to be happening in the Bay Area. One of the reasons I wanted to go there was I wanted to go to San Francisco because of the beach scene and all that kind of stuff. But I wound up in San Jose, which is 50 miles south. So I didn't know what to expect. But what I discovered was there was a lot of little places that were like the coffee house we had in D.C. We had one, Coffee and Confusion. And in the beginning, we just had the one, the Folk Theater in San Jose and the Tangent in Palo Alto. But the Tangent in Palo Alto is a pizza place also, so it's a little more upscale. But the coffee house folk scene, I mean, it really was a place to meet, to talk about stuff, talk about ideas, what was going on, play different kinds of music. And it wasn't just blues, guitar, or bluegrass. I mean, it was all kinds of stuff. Could be flamenco, could be jazz, could be anything.
What was so unique about her voice?
Janis's voice, I remember the first time I heard her was the first time that I had been physically in the presence of a female blues singer that could sing like that. So that was almost overwhelming to begin with. As I sometimes said, in some ways she channeled Bessie Smith, but she was always Janis. There was a quality, an indefinable quality to her voice as a blues singer that was so emotional and so pure. I can't really describe it adequately in words, but it was just so special that the first time you heard it just knocked your socks off.
Did you intend for these rehearsal tapes to ever see the light of day, or were they just for practice? And could you tell at the time that the typewriter was going to be heard so prominently in the background?
Well, if you think, the dialogue about the typewriter tapes is very humorous to me. because we're still talking about it, almost over 50 years later. The recordings were made because I had a tape recorder and I recorded all kinds of stupid stuff just because it was such a novelty to me. I don't think that we really thought about making recordings or whether there was a typewriter or whether the milkman was ringing the doorbell or anything. I mean, it just was. I mean, after the fact, of course, you're going, well, maybe we should have. But it wasn't a studio recording. It was just we're sitting around rehearsing, a bunch of people hanging out, and given another set of circumstances, people would have been talking in the background, but in this case, they weren't.
At what point did you guys decide to release the typewriter tapes?
I would be hard pressed to remember exactly when the release of the typewriter tapes came to pass. I remember back in the late 60s that I gave Janis the tapes to listen to, and she subsequently gave them back. I can't really remember what really happened with them at that time. I know that 3 of the songs have showed up on a box set since then, but the dates escape me. I mean, the good news is that they survived.
What's your favorite memory of your time with Janis?
When I think of the time that I spent with Janis, and again, in the scheme of things, it was like just the blink of an eye, historically speaking. It was just such an honor to play music with somebody of her caliber, whose voice and spirit was so pure. Now, also, all this stuff is several years before the rock and roll thing, and to me, even though she was a great, rock performer and singer and stuff like that, I'm so fond of remembering her as a blues singer. That's my powerful memory.
Did Janis share any personal stories with you about her life in San Francisco or Pennsylvania?
In the time that Janis and I spent together, we never discussed anything personal, ever. I knew nothing about her. Other people told me that she was from Port Arthur, Texas. I didn't even get that. It was just always about the music. Although, no, there is one thing. There is one thing. I remember when the rock and roll thing had started to happen, Janis and Jack and I were visiting Jerry and the Grateful Dead at Olin Poly. Grateful Dead fans know about Olin Poly. It's a sort of a ranch north of San Francisco, and they had a swimming pool and all this stuff because the Dead was a communal kind of thing. And we're sitting around the pool, and I remember that Janis and I were having this discussion about, as blues singers and players, about how long it would take for us to be taken seriously as blues artists, because all the people we looked up to were long dead and all that kind of stuff. When were we going to be taken seriously? And I remember Jerry said, someday we're going to be archetypes. And of course we went, not a chance. But of course, in a way, it came to pass.
How did the typewriter tapes come about?
Well, the typewriter tapes, that's sort of an interesting thing. That would have been probably in mid to late 1964. I was living in a house in Fremont Street with my wife, Margaretta, at that time. And a bunch of us were hanging out. There's another guitar player, Steve Mann, that spent a lot of time there. Janis had gotten some sort of a gig, which I don't remember what it was, in San Francisco. And she had just taken the bus down to spend the afternoon rehearsing the songs that we were going to play. And my ex-wife, Margaretta, was from Sweden, and she was always writing letters home. And she was just writing a letter home while we were rehearsing.
Why did you end up recording in your home versus a studio?
People talk about recording in the studio and recording as a goal and all this kind of stuff, as a destination. None of us would even have thought about recording in a studio because we couldn't have recorded in a studio. Everybody records at home today because that's how it is, but in those days you couldn't record in a studio unless you had a record deal, and none of us wouldn't even consider that. So I had a little Sony tape recorder. It was a mono. It wasn't even a stereo recorder. And I remember, I forget what I paid for it. It seemed like a lot of money at the time. And it was such a novelty that we just recorded everything.
Can you tell us about the room in your apartment where you recorded?
Well, the typewriter tapes were recorded in this house that we were renting that Margaret and I were renting on Fremont Street in Santa Clara, which is adjacent community to San Jose. And it was a pretty, it had a couple of large rooms in it. At one time we had Steve Mann as a roommate, so there was a couple of us, 3 and 4 of us living there at any given time. We had no furniture. Oh, I mean, almost no furniture. We had beds and stuff like that, but I remember, I don't even think we had a kitchen table at the time. So there was just like something, Margaretta may have been typing on a milk crate with a typewriter on top of it, and we had some chairs to sit on. So really, basically, it was like an empty house with a bunch of college kids, because that's how old we were back then, sitting around and playing music.
Janis sounds like she is having a blast when you record. Was it fun?
In the tail after it's all said and done, my relationship with Janis sort of has taken more weight in history in some respect than it actually took at the time, because I remember Laura Joplin, Janis' sister, telling me that Janis was always reinventing herself, and the Janis that I knew was that folky, sort of bluesy Janis, who, to my ear, sounded like she was channeling Bessie Smith, although she always sounded like herself. We always just had a great time playing. I mean, there was no baggage between us. We never over-rehearsed. She lived in San Francisco. I lived in Santa Clara. And so to get together, it really, from my point of view, was just pure fun, always. And I'd like to think that it was that way for her, too.
Do you remember what she wore?
In the hanging out that I did with Janis back in those early 60s days, I'm sure she wore other things, but to be honest with you, I can only remember her wearing work shirts and jeans. We were folkies. That was the uniform. You had to wear that.
What did success mean to Janis at the time?
All of us that were playing music back in that time, even though I was still going to college when I first played with Janis, but I think that all of us wanted to be professional musicians, and part of that involved being successful on some level. Now, I don't know what Janis's dream of success was, because we never discussed this, and I think my dream of success was on a much more microcosmic level than that, because what I thought about was being able to play a couple times a week at different coffee houses and to own a guitar store. That was my dream of success. Now, I know people in the retail business, I'm glad I missed out on that, but the rest of it sort of worked out okay for me.
In those early days, did you ever accompany Janis at any gigs with any of the other San Francisco bands?
Now, in that time when Janis and I actually played together, that would have been before 1965, so it would have been before the band thing. So we played gigs when there were people who would subsequently be in San Francisco bands. Like if we played in Palo Alto, obviously Jerry and Bob Weir and maybe Pigpen, and the guys that subsequently were in the Dead didn't exist yet, would show up. But you have to remember that this is way before the bands. Some people played, there are lots of people that played together in different formats, but this is way before the rock and roll thing happened.
Can you describe the rivalry between LA and San Francisco bands in the 1960s?
Oh yeah, well, I remember when the San Francisco bands began to get successful, and we go down to work in LA, there was rivalry between some of the bands, and some of the guys were friends of ours. Like I met Crosby as a folk soloist at the Folk Theater way before the Byrds and all that kind of stuff. So he was always our friend. But you meet the other guys that you didn't know. I mean, like for example, we would never have been taken seriously as musicians by a band like the Mamas and the Papas, because they were so professional, and all that kind of. But after the fact, it was just a different thing. Part of the charm, in my opinion, of the San Francisco bands is that we really were not amateur musicians. Very few of us read music, all that stuff that you needed to do to be an LA session player or something like that. I mean, we really were folkies that somehow managed to be elevated into the rock and roll world, whereas the LA music scene was pros, the guys who could do sessions and this and all this other stuff that went along with it. When we joined, when we had to join unions back then, we joined Local 6 in San Francisco and Local 47 in LA. And in '47 in LA, you had to take a music reading test. Now, thanks to my music lessons when I was 8 years old as a taking piano, I could BS my way through it. You know, you don't have to do that anymore. Now they're scared if you can play.
Janis was conflicted over an early offer she got from Paul Rothchild to join a blues band and move to LA. With all the material things attached to the deal, did she talk to you about this?
You know, I remember the Paul Rothchild Janis quandary, but she never spoke to me about her business things. We knew all this stuff was going on. And you know, by that time, you know, the Airplane had a recording deal. By that time, we were sort of in the pool with the big fish, you know. And so you thought about these things seriously. If she was conflicted about it or not, I never knew.
Did you know the story about Janis and Peter DeBlanc, the man she was living with before she went back to Port Arthur to clean up?
You know, back in the era when I knew Janis, this was way before my exposure to hard drugs or any of that kind of thing, and so I didn't know that she had a drug problem, and I didn't know that she actually had a man in her life. I mean, like I said, our thing was really always about the music.
Did you guys keep in touch when she left San Francisco for Port Arthur, Texas, the first time, or just run into each other again after she was back and playing with Big Brother and the holding company?
Yeah, you know, after the fact, I know that Janis returned to Port Arthur for a while, but to me, it's just she was there, and then she was gone, and then she was back, and she was in Big Brother.
Can you describe how she was different in her approach from her first stay in San Francisco to her second when she came back to join Big Brother and the holding company?
When I first met Janis in her first trip to San Francisco, as I said, that was to me, that was the blues, folky Janis. And when she came back and joined Big Brother, then it was game on with the rock and roll business. And it was the visuals were different, the energy was different. I mean, you know, in a way, of course, we are who we are, and she was still Janis, you know, and she approached everything with the same passion and intensity that she approached everything. But then that was the Janis, the pearl that we got to know later on.
You and Janis were both at the Monterey Pop Festival. Did you get to spend much time with her? Did you see her set?
When we were at Monterey Pop, which was a cool thing because that was the first major festival that actually dignified rock and roll as something worthy of having a festival. Because in Monterey, keep in mind, though, there was just jazz festivals and stuff like that before then. We pretty much had so much on our plate getting ready for the show because it was, you know, we talked a little bit about the LA thing. Monterey Pop was put on by a lot of the LA people, so we really wanted to be good. We wanted to show them that we actually could play, you know, and stuff like that. So yeah, I saw Janis's, or I like to think I remember seeing Janis's performance with Big Brother, but to be honest with you, memory's a funny thing. I saw them so many times, I see her in my mind's eye all the time. I certainly remember seeing it in the movie later on. I mean, she was great. I mean, as a performer, she was fantastic. And Monterey Pop, you know, all the cards were on the table for us. It was a big deal for the San Francisco bands because it was a serious festival and all these people from all over the world were there, et cetera, et cetera.
What type of musicians were Big Brother? How would you describe the type of music they played and how they played together on stage?
Well, the Big Brother band in that time was a little bit different than the Airplane was in that time. I don't mean to be putting thoughts or words into any of their mouths, but I think looking back at it, in some respects, the Airplane thing was a little more cerebral in some respects because we had so many complex vocal harmonies. We had three-part harmonies and all this stuff going on. Big Brother, of course, they had harmonies, stuff like that going on also, but to me, the way they channeled their energy, in a lot of ways, I think they were a lot more spontaneous in their performance than the Airplane was, you know. And of course, Janis being such an incredibly intense performer, and they were right along with her. They're right with the program there.
Did Janis talk to you about conflicts she had in Big Brother and the holding company? Do you know about her pains over staying with the band or leaving?
You know, as I've said before in this interview, um, Janis and I really never discussed any business things at all. You hear about this stuff. I heard that she, you know, sort of anguished over whether to go or whether to stay and stuff like that. But I don't know. At the time, I remember thinking I really didn't know it was true because I didn't hear it from her.
What was the influence of music business on the San Francisco bands in the late 1960s?
One of the things that I think historically is interesting to note, if you look at the San Francisco scene, but before the rock and roll thing happened, the community was a small community. Everybody knew each other. Everybody was very supportive artistically, regardless of anything really. And once the bands that became commercially visible began to evolve, some of that community dissolved, not because people were turning their back on each other, just because it had so much to do with their own career, certainly for myself and the guys in my band, and I think maybe for theirs also. I think as friends and as colleagues, we're always happy to see each other, but the scene changed as everybody started to get a little bit older and as we really became part of the commercial music machine.
How important was fame to Janis Joplin?
Ooh, was fame important to Janis Joplin? That's a good question. And I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know from her telling me, but by the way that she responded to her public, I would say that it was important.
How powerful was Albert Grossman?
Albert Grossman, as their manager, was one of these kingmakers back in those days. I mean, you have to remember, he's the one that put Peter, Paul, and Mary together, and he managed, you know, Dylan, Butterfield Blues Band. I mean, he was one of the big dogs. And I remember when he first came to San Francisco, and I met him. I remember meeting him. If he was still alive, I'm sure he wouldn't remember meeting me because he was a big dog, I was a little dog. But what I remember was at the Winterland with Bill Graham, and I remember the San Francisco scene was full of all these freaks doing all this stuff. And I remember Albert looked out and he said, "They're loose, but they're not free." I remember thinking, what is he talking about? I mean, he was an important man. He was not an important man to me because none of me or my friends were managed by him, but he was certainly in the scheme of the music business at that time. He was one of the biggest dogs around.
We are looking at the relationship between fame and validation from her family, as seen in her letters. Did you notice a need for her to be successful to make her parents proud? Do you think that was an important thing for her, for your generation?
Yeah. You know, Janis and I, as I've said several times, we never really discussed her private life, and I knew nothing about it. I've learned more about it in the past 10 years than I certainly knew back then. But I think that, you know, given some of the things I know about her going back to her school and all that kind of stuff, I think it was important for her to validate herself in the eyes of her peers, to show that she was not only, that was certainly this, to show that she was authentic and extremely successful. I mean, you look at stuff like this after the fact, you know, somebody like my age, you wonder, how important is that? But Janis died very young. At her age, I'm sure it was very important.
Her trip to her high school reunion would be a good example of this. What do you think about her going home to her high school reunion?
You know, when you think about people going back to high school reunions, we're on dangerous ground there. I mean, obviously it was important for her to do this. I remember when my 50th high school anniversary came around, I've kept in touch with people, my friends. We all allowed, we didn't like most of the people back there anyway. Why would we want to go meet them now, you know? But the funny thing is, of course, as you get older, you reconnect and you find, you know, you got a lot in common. You joke about all the old school stuff. Obviously, you know, Janis was still very younger. Obviously, this was very important to her. I would never have done it back then because I could have cared less, but it was obviously important to her. It's become more important to me in these ancient times than it was back then.
Can you describe Janis' second band, the Cosmic Blues Band?
The Cosmic Blues Band. I guess if you think about Janis and the Cosmic Blues Band, in some ways, some people might have thought that it was a musicianship-wise, was a step up from Big Brother. You know, when you start talking about musicianship, we're talking about art, and that really doesn't mean a lot. there certainly was an energetic gestalt to aspects of the Big Brother that were never replicated in any of the bands that Janis played with after that, because everything was much more scripted. So to me, it's apples and oranges. You really can't compare the two.
Janet refers to her live shows as the best of her. Can you talk about her connection with the audience?
I think Janis, as a performer, was certainly absolutely about involving the audience in a really first-person kind of way with her performance. I mean, over the years, I've seen lots of really great performers. She's one of the most dynamic performers, men or women, I've ever seen. And this is how she was, So obviously, part of her show, part of her act, aside from the music, her music being great, was that showmanship thing. Now, over the years, we've come to take so much for granted in the showmanship department. People flying through the air and doing this and doing that and all that kind of stuff. Janis did all this just by herself, without gimmicks and production effects.
Can you tell us how the audience reacted to Janis?
I think Janis owned audiences when she did shows. I mean, when she came out, she owned that audience. I've seen her perform a number of times with the different bands she was in, and I never saw her fail to achieve that.
Can you describe her relationship with Grace Slick?
I think Janis and Grace Slick were buddies. I don't know how deep it goes. You'd have to talk to Grace about that. And Grace likes to talk, so I'm sure she'd be happy to do that. But I remember when we were all, there's a period of time when we were the Airplane gang and family, for a number of sundry reasons. We're all living at 2400 Fulton Street. Janis would drop by a lot, shoot pool, shoot the shit with Grace, hanging out. I think they were buddies. And certainly, as the two most powerful and most visible women performers in the scene, they certainly had that in common.
Did you see her at Woodstock, and what was the performance like?
I didn't get to see Janis at Woodstock. The only act that I saw at Woodstock was Santana. We sort of came in, and then we went out. We just did our show and left. And just as a sidebar to this whole thing, I remember that Santana show as being one of the most powerful live shows I've ever seen in my life. And I've seen it in movies and I've heard records. I still agree with that. I miss Janis at Woodstock.
Did you talk to Janis Joplin when she was making Pearl?
Towards the end of Janis's stay on Earth, when she was making Pearl and stuff like that, we so infrequently saw each other that we never got to talk about that.
Can you share any stories that come to mind of Janis, funny, sad, serious? We are trying to deepen the understanding of Janis Joplin through personal accounting.
One of the last times that I spoke to Janis, we were recording in town. The Airplane was recording in L.A., and I don't know what Janis was doing, but we were all staying at the Landmark Motel. It's a motel where Janis subsequently passed. And I remember we're sitting at the swimming pool. We were talking. At this time in my life, I knew nothing about opiate addictions and stuff like that. Janis and I were just talking about stuff. And I remember she was telling me that she was trying to clean up, or was cleaning up. I don't remember exactly. And of course, this wasn't something I could actually relate to because I hadn't been through that yet, But we were always very supportive of each other, whatever the thing was, and we just hung out, and I wished her well. I think that was the last time I saw her.
Anything else you want to add?
What about driving around in the car with her?
That's scary. I think she took me for a ride in her Porsche once.
Because you told me the one car that's at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah, the Porsche. Yeah, she took me for a ride. I think she scared me. Yeah, I think that she definitely scared me. What's not to like about a pretty girl driving a little car? I mean, it's good.
The time has come for us to pause and think of living as it was. Into the future we must cross, and I'd like to go with you. I'd like to go with you. You say I'm harder than a wall, a marble shaft about to fall. I love you dearer than them all, and I'd like to stay with you. I'd like to stay with you. Well, as we walked into the day, skies of blue had turned to gray. I might have not been clear to say, I never looked away. Well, I never looked away. And though I'm feeling you inside, my life is rolling with the tide. I'd like to see it be an open ride, going along with you. Now going along with you. The time we borrowed from ourselves can't stay within a vault to dwell. When living turns into a lender's well, I'd like to be with you. I'd like to be with you. And when we came out into view, and there I found myself with you, when breathing felt like something new, then new, going along with you. Hey, I'm going along with you.
Thanks so much.
Well, won't you come with me? We'll go running through the mountains just in time, set the morning free. Well, our hearts are young and strong. You're moving like an angel. We never seem to age in my dream. Well, I never took my time. I took it all for granted. The gift of life is never what it seems. Well, let's run like we did then, like spirits in the morning. We never seem to age in my dream. These precious moments fly like pages in the wind, flying to a place beyond the stars. Memories fade with grace, cast away like rust, and leave us wondering who and what we are. Well, that morning shone like gold. I thought I'd live forever, but living well was way beyond my means. Morning breeze like fire, we watched the dawn together. We never seemed to age in my dream. This morning as I woke, as that midnight spell was broken, I looked around with nothing left to need. Well, the world around us turned, I hold these passing moments. We never seem to age in my dream. We never seem to age in my dream. You never seem to age in my dream.
Thank you.
Just say whining boy, don't deny my name. Just say whining boy, Lord, I don't deny my name. Was it not my name? Whining boy, don't deny my name, and pick it up and shake it like sweet staving chain. Just a whining boy, you know that, Lord, I don't deny my name. I said, sister, 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 dirty little sow. You know, sister, 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 dirty little sow, little sow. You know, sister, sister, dirty little sow. She wanna be a bad girl, but she just don't know how. Just a whining boy, don't deny my name. Mama, mama, mama said, Mama, take a look at sis. Mama, 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 take a look at sis, little sis. Well, mama, 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 take a look at sis. You know she's out there on that levee doing that double twist. Whining boy, Lord, I don't deny my name. There's a spider, spider, spider climbing up that wall. So spider, spider, I said, climbing up that wall, up that wall. Spider, spider, climbing up that wall. You know, he want to get up to the top to have his ashes hauled. Whining boy, you know, Lord, I don't deny my name. Just a whining boy, don't deny my name. Whining boy, don't deny my name. Deny my name. Whining boy, don't deny my name. You know, pick it up and shake it like sweet Stephen Chin. The whining boy, I said, Lord, I don't deny my
Thank you very much. Well, listen, we're just getting this ball rolling here. We're in our scenic four-piece station. I'll send you a picture of it. We have a room full of wonderful people, and my wife has insisted that she say something to you, so we're going to start with that. Hang on a sec.
Okay.
Hi, Grace.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Good for an old fart, you know.
Yeah. I just want to say that we are so honored to be able to show your art in the Psychedelic Gallery, and it's gotten a lot of great response. This weekend closes out the show. I extended it an extra month, but it's beautifully displayed. We've got a lot of people that are sharing a lot of stories about the first time they saw the airplane. So I just want to say thank you very much. It's been one of the really most special shows that we've had here.
Well, thank you for allowing me to present.
And I've sold 2 of your pieces already.
All right. We love that.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to pass things off to Jorma.
Yep.
And
Okay.
I hope that I see you soon.
Okay, what's going on in the background there?
Well, you tell her, Vanessa.
Well, do you hear a little delay?
No, I hear like scrabbling. I'm not sure what to call it. Vague voices.
Well, we have an audience. There's probably about 70 or so people in the audience. Yeah.
Oh,
now you're
okay.
going to hear them clapping. And, you know, we are so high tech. We're doing this iPhone to iPhone with lots of black duct tape. We are so high tech. So you're going to hear people in the background. We can hear you great. We hear no delay. So we apologize if there is a little bit of interference, but you can blame it on Jorma.
It's my fault.
Okay, well, if I can't tell what you're saying, I'll say what, and that's either due to my bad hearing or because of the stuff in the background.
Okay, if you say what, I'll try to repeat myself. If I
Oh,
can
I
remember
know.
what I said.
I know what is happening. There's an echo on my voice.
Oh, okay. Well, there's no echo here. You sound pristine and delightful.
Okay.
Okay, well, listen, first of all, before we get this ball rolling, I've said this to you personally, but I want to say it in front of the audience in the recording that we're doing. what an honor it was to play with you in the day and to still have you as a friend today. So you can file that away. I'm sure it's not worth much, but I just wanted to go on record as saying that.
It's difficult when you mention Quaaludes.
Yes. Now listen, here's another thing too. Right next to me here, we have that lovely painting you gave me of Monterey Pop, and even though nobody has noticed, some of us have noticed that one of the members of the band is missing, and we wondered if you could comment on that before we get serious about these questions. Do you remember which one?
Of our band, you mean?
Yes.
Okay, Jack, Jorma.
Yeah, no, Jack looks like Joni Mitchell. He's there.
Yeah, Jack looks like Joni Mitchell, but he was very soft when he was young.
He
looking.
was. That's a fact.
Jorma, Marty.
Yes.
Me.
Yes.
Spencer.
Yes.
Paul Kentner.
Is he there?
I can't remember drawing him.
I don't think he's there. I don't know. I talked to him the other day. He said to say hi, by the way.
Why wouldn't I put Paul in, though? I don't have anything going on with Paul one way or the other.
Yeah, he's the father of your daughter, for God's sake.
Yeah, I know he is. She's not especially happy about that, but I don't have anything going on. I must have put Paul in there. Maybe I just didn't draw him well enough to be recognizable.
I don't know. Well, it's a great painting. Normally it lives in my son's room, but today it's on stage next to me. I think he said,
right.
Who are these funny-looking people? I said, you had to be there.
Musicians in the 60s. That's what we look like.
Oh, boy. Yeah, we were just having a discussion about that. You know, it's when people talk about how different you looked in the day. I was in a truck stop coming down from Minnesota with my son the other day, and we went in to buy cheese doodles or something like that, and the girl behind the counter looks at us and goes, "What's he, a mini you?" I'm going, "We look that much alike?" She goes, "Well, yeah." Anyway, I don't look like that anymore. All right, listen, you ready to rock?
I am.
Okay, so we've got two categories of questions here, and I think what I'm going to do, if you don't mind, is just jump into the art questions, and we have some questions here that the good folks have written down. But okay, so Vanessa said, "Don't sound like you're just reading the questions off the paper." So I'm gonna do my best not to sound like that. But these are good questions, and one of the things, the first one here is, did you study art, or painting, or is this just something that became you?
No, I started painting when I was very little, and I'd draw an angel, and my parents would make a Christmas card out of it, so I knew I could sort of draw. But I took art at the University of Miami in Florida simply because I wasn't there to learn anything, and I knew I could pass Art 101. I mean, in Miami, I took anything that was easy for me or that I was really interested in. So I took one art course in Miami in 1958.
Well, it seemed to work pretty good. You know, I was just thinking, I'm a college graduate myself, and it didn't seem to hurt me too much. When you have absolutely nothing to do and you're on your computer, there's this gal that's a humorous blog named Jenna Marbles, and she has this one thing where she talks about what you can do with your diploma. You can shave with it. You can use it for a pillow. All kinds of really interesting stuff.
Well, I didn't graduate. You did. I didn't know that. Did Jack graduate?
No, I think Jack just finished paying off his student loan recently. Actually, he went to MJC, Montgomery Junior College in Southern Maryland. Now it's just Montgomery College. I don't think he graduated. He came to his senses. He didn't spend as much money as my parents did.
Yeah, no, I don't think Paul graduated either. I didn't. I only went to 2 years. Paul went to a couple of years. Santa Clara, right?
You bet. The Jesuit fathers. Give me a boy until he's 8, and I'll give you the man. All right, let's see.
Oh, boy. That's a little rough, because poor Paul went to a Catholic military school.
Perfect.
Now, if that isn't a mixed message, I don't know.
You know, I knew that, and I still have trouble visualizing it. Although I have seen the picture of him in his little uniform.
Yeah, me too.
All right. So moving right along.
Onward.
Yes, onward. All right. What do you have a particular genre of art that you like? I mean, if you were like, I'm going to go to some museum somewhere, and what would you like to see? What would you look at?
Well, now I like pretty much everything, all forms or genres of art. When I was little, I didn't like modern art at all. We'd go to the De Young Museum. My father and I would go in San Francisco, and I always went for Latour and Rembrandt and the Vermeer and the classics. I did not like Picasso. I didn't like Pollock. I didn't like any of that stuff. But now, I like pretty much everything.
That's probably a good thing. I remember my family was coming back from an overseas post, and we went to Paris, and they went to the Louvre. But I was so mad at my parents for being my parents that I sat in the car for 4 hours, so I have no idea what's in there.
Well, I went to the Louvre, too, and I went and looked at the Mona Lisa, and I thought, why is that considered so large and wonderful? It's okay, but it doesn't knock my socks off. So I have weird opinions on every form of art. All of it I like in general, but I can pick out stuff in abstract art that I do and don't like. So it's all over the map.
I was thinking, I guess, yeah, the Mona, I guess they had a good press agent or something. Hard to say.
Yeah, because he's done a ton of stuff that's way more interesting as far as I'm concerned than Mona Lisa. But for some reason, that just keeps rolling along.
Amen. All right, let me see what we got here. Oh, this is a good one here. When you're painting portraits of like some of the musicians that you paint, do you listen to the music of said artists while doing that?
No. I get as many photographs as I can to get the bone structure right. And
Cool.
Then I go from the right bone structure to what I want to impose on the viewer. And that is because of Jerry Garcia's known drug use, people tend to think you're stupid, but he wasn't stupid.
No, he
wasn't. And he was always, when I talked to him anyway, interesting and interested. So I usually try to impose that on his face rather than the idea of some stupid drug addict.
Right.
Because, when you're a drug addict, there are times when you're stupid, but as a whole human being, drug addicts are not just stupid. We're stupid for doing the drugs, but we're not born stupid. So I don't like that image of Garcia being kind of blah. He wasn't like that as far as I knew.
No, he's one of the smartest guys I ever met, actually.
Yeah, he was very interesting and interested in a lot of different things. So I tried to put that into the picture whenever I can.
Yeah, on the subject of stupid, I remember my grandmother. She had a couple. She was a hard woman, and of course, I did put her through hell my senior year of high school. But I came back from my first quarter at Antioch with this friend of mine. He goes, "Mrs. Levine, Jerry's doing twice as well this quarter as he did last quarter," and she actually spit on the floor and said, "Twice nothing is still nothing." All right, let's see. Okay, this is an interesting question. I'm not sure exactly, since I'm not a graphic artist, I'm not quite sure what this relates to, but if there was one painting you could paint, I guess if that you had some sort of artistic goal, what would it be? Does that make any sense?
One painting that I could have?
No, that you could paint. If you
painting that I could
I mean,
paint.
is there some lofty pinnacle you're aspiring to, or?
Well, right now, the immediate painting I want to do is there haven't ever been pictures of Jesus laughing.
Good point.
And China was the one who mentioned that. She said, "Mom, when are you going to do a picture of Jesus laughing?"
Good point.
And I went, "Well, that's an interesting one." So that's one of them I'm working on right now, is how to work that out and what is he laughing at and so forth.
Good point.
So,
if you ever come out here to visit us, we have a painting at the house that one of Vanessa's friend did, and it's a painting of 5 Jesuses, and they're all in a somewhat different shade of green of all things. Oh, he looks traditional except for the color of everything, and the title of the painting is "The Jolly Green Jesus." Really.
he might even appreciate that.
Oh, I'm sure he would. All right. Okay. This is interesting. Do you ever use computers to do what you do, or you just
No,
do what you do?
I like the feel of the brushes. I like the squirting the paint out. I like mixing paint. I like the whole process.
Yeah.
And the computer removes quite a lot of that process.
Right. Yeah, I'm from a musical point of view, I'm inclined to agree with you also. I mean, I recognize that I'm an old fuddy-duddy and that there is art to computer stuff too, but no, I don't know. I'm not completely convinced yet.
Well, for art, not so much. I love my iPad, and I use it all the time.
Oh, no, I
every
love
day,
mine too.
all
Don't get me
day.
wrong.
But I use it like people would use the Encyclopedia Britannica when I was little.
Right.
And I can ask it anything. It's just unbelievable. I mean, I get answers to stupid questions. I get answers to misspelled questions. I get answers to anything I ask it.
Yeah, we're all geniuses now.
You know, and people say, well, I don't believe in God because you can't touch it or you can't see it. Well, look at all the stuff that goes on that you can't see. You get whole pictures on a television set with people moving around and sound and everything else. That's going through the air without being seen while it's going through the air. It also has all different programs going to all different places, all different people, without crashing into each other. I mean, I just don't get it. And how can you negate God because you can't see him? Huh?
Huh. Well, listen, speaking of your iPad, I love mine too. I love my iPhone. Actually, I love everything I have, but that's another story. Do you ever play Temple Run Oz?
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Next time I see it, it's a real time waster. You're gonna love it. Okay, okay. Now there's a good one. Do you prefer to? Is there a special time of day or night you like to work, or just whenever the muse calls you?
Well, when I was young, my mind would simply drag my body around wherever my mind wanted to go. Now, my body demands certain things because I'm old and falling apart.
I hear you,
so
sister.
I sleep about 3 times a day, and I'm up 3 times a day. I don't do 8 hours, which they say isn't very healthy, but hey, there's nothing I can do about it. And I'm wide awake at about 3 or 4 in the morning. So I like to work then because it's quiet and nobody calls me. So it's very focused.
That sounds good to me. And by the way, I hope you appreciate that I'm missing my afternoon nap to have this conversation with you.
Well,
Okay.
there's nothing more depressing than a couple of old farts getting all the way into their medical issues. So I'll avoid that.
I love these conversations. Okay, here we go. Let's see. Okay, do you, like I said, as a graphic artist, this is hard for me to grasp, and as a musician, I pretty much do what I'm going to do, so it's hard to grasp too. But the question is there a new direction in your art you would like to venture into?
Yeah, more abstract.
Really?
Most of mine is elaborate cartoons, is what they are, and I'd like to go into abstract.
Cool. Okay.
Just to push it.
Well, let's see what we got. Okay, now we have the heading on this next question says nostalgia question. And by the way, the facts surrounding this question were actually on Jeopardy the other night. You know, this is how famous you are. And it was I think it was a teen Jeopardy or something, and all the kids, they had no idea what was going on. They all got it wrong. Anyway, the question is, you were invited by Tricia Nixon to a celebration at a special location once. There's no question there. But of course, the question there was, who did you take with you, et cetera. Do you have anything you'd like to say to the folks about the great Tricia Nixon reception? You didn't invite me, by the way. I do know that.
Well, what it was is she went to Finch College, which I attended as well 10 years before her. But Finch College was so small that she invited all of the living alumni to the White House for tea.
Excellent.
But my name was Grace Wing when I was there, so she sent the invitation to Grace Wing, not knowing that that's Grace Slick.
Excellent.
So I looked at that invitation and went, oh, yes, indeedy. So I called Abby Hoffman and said, why don't you go as my boyfriend or husband? Because they said, you can bring your husband or your brother or something. And the security guards stopped me. They didn't say anything to Abby. He's one of the Chicago Seven. And they didn't say one word to Abby. They stopped me and said, I'm sorry you can't go in. You're a security risk. Because the security guards recognized who I was. So they wouldn't let me in, which is too bad because I had about 600 mics of acid in my pocket, which I was planning on putting into Nixon's tea. Because I know how formal teas work. I was taught that at Finch College. Finch College is nothing more than a thing for girls to learn which fork goes with which food and get a Princeton boy. It's like that.
I have great difficulty
I know
imagining.
that you stand at a formal tea. You don't sit. You stand, and being an entertainer, I could gesture a lot, and as I'm gesturing, the 600 mics of acid in my little fingernail would have gone across Richard Nixon's tea. And he would have been crazy in a bag of squirrels in about a half an hour, and nobody would know why. But he was nutty enough that it didn't matter whether I did that or not. He got himself out.
I guess we'll never know.
I know.
Well, you made Jeopardy, that's all I can say. And I think the answer was Abby Hoffman. I can't believe that you were less recognized. I mean, that you were, that Abby Hoffman slipped through the net. That just gives you faith in our government and the Secret Service. That's all I can say.
He was very contained that day. He was aware that if you step out of line, they may, put you in a truck and haul you away. But the odd thing was they didn't approach him at all. So who knows what that was all about.
Okay, we got, Jim Marshall's estate was just doing a book of his stuff, and for the folks in the audience here, Jim Marshall was a really great photographer of live music, and he started out doing jazz groups and a lot of stuff way before he got into the rock and roll scene. He's truly unbelievable. And I guess I just kind of wanted to think about your memories of Jim. I remember him as one of the most irascible, irritating human beings I ever met in my life. But I really liked him, and that said, he got all these great pictures. I remember when he took that picture of us in the circle staring down at him. I think we made him so mad he foamed at the mouth or something. But he finally got the picture.
Well, he used to say, "Smile, you guys," all the time. It's smile. Come on, smile. So Janis, he took a picture of Janis and me, and both of us decided that no matter how much he yelled about smiling, we weren't going to smile. But he still got a good picture out of it. The guy was really a good photographer, although he was something of an asshole.
Oh, he was a delightful asshole. Well, anyway, I got to write a little blurb for his book. I mean, listen, I'll write for any famous asshole. It's as simple as that. But he was one of the best. And you look at his pictures of Miles Davis and a lot of the guys from that era, and a lot of us guys too. I mean, it's hard for people to imagine really how irritating this guy was. But he's like the fly on the wall. He got these pictures that were truly amazing.
Yeah, well, maybe that's how he got the pictures. Maybe if you irritate somebody, the pictures turn out well for some reason or other. I don't know.
Or maybe
but he did get the pictures.
Yeah, he did. Maybe we would have just done anything to get rid of him. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, here's a musical question here. From the audience, how do you feel that so many people are still listening to Airplane songs after all these years?
Well, I think the media, the tech world has a lot to do with it, because I get fan mail now from kids. I mean, they're 11, 12, 13, and they like the music.
It's amazing.
For one reason or another. Maybe it's because there's an actual music and actual people playing instruments and an actual story. I think there's a certain hunger for that. So maybe that's it. We're being exposed to a whole bunch of new people. And I get fan mail from, Poland and weird places. So within the last few years, the fan mail's jumped way up because of media.
You know, I was thinking that I rarely listen to myself. It's just not something that I do. But every now and then, something will happen, and I'll listen to like a bunch of Airplane songs or something like that, and inevitably, I always say, "Man, we were really pretty good."
I do too when I listen to, and I don't listen to them that often, same thing, but when I do, I go, wow, that was really interesting.
Yeah,
and the
to say
thing
the
that
least.
I loved most was bringing a song to the band and just simply letting you and Jack and Spencer and not so much Paul because we won't go into that, but letting you guys just go with it. You knew the chords, and you knew where the lyric came in the chords. That was about it. I'd play it on the piano or guitar, whatever I'd written it on, and then just let you guys go. And you were so good that it was just flat. I loved it. Loved that part of it.
Well, we were talking about the other day, Jack and I, and that's a situation in a band situation that so infrequently happens, where everybody is so inviting to band members to create what's going on, as opposed to saying, here's the song, here's the arrangement, you're not playing it the way I like it, you're fired.
Yeah. Well, nobody could fire anybody because there wasn't any head guy.
Yes, how true.
I mean, it's not Linda Ronstadt and the Dwarfs, so...
How true, how true. Well, let's see here. Here's a question. You don't have to answer this now, but think about it. I did not write this. Has popped up from the audience. What can Jorma and Vanessa do to get you to come to the Fur Peach Ranch? Just think about that, and we'll talk later.
All
Honest.
right.
I had nothing. We had nothing to do with that. Okay, here's a good one. This is a good one, actually. Do you have any opinions on how the music industry has or hasn't changed since we were the big dogs?
Well, actually, it's obvious to everybody. We had records.
Right.
They have CDs, still, sort of. But a lot of it is computer driven.
Right.
So that is totally different. We didn't have personal computers. I think they had some big, probably computers at the CIA or whatever. But, but we didn't have
Excellent.
computers or iPhones or any of that stuff. So you go to the record store and you buy a record. That's it. That's how it worked. You promote the record by touring. It's pretty simple. But I don't think it goes that way now. I don't know exactly how it goes, but you do have to tour apparently.
Yeah. I'm not. You think about this kind of stuff. I guess in our time, some of the things that are really big changes is artists like us keeping our own publishing and being able to sort of self-produce records and having some sort of autonomy over your art. And I guess the younger folks that are doing that today still fight those battles with record companies, but probably not as much, because heck, you can make a great sounding record in your basement now with a laptop.
Yeah. Well, also there was tech stuff going on, but it was literally with the guitars and the amps. In other words, you guys were always working on different sounds that you could get out of the amps and going to stores to learn new pedals, new stuff. So there was tech stuff going on, but it wasn't computer.
Yikes! How this thing sneak in here? It's not a bad question though. The question here is, will you sign a copy of Surrealistic Pillow if sent to you, and unincluded here, with a self-addressed stamped envelope, return addressed envelope, which is signed by everyone else?
Yes.
There you
SASE, as long as
Good.
it's self-addressed and stamped.
Oh, hey, here's a really good question here, actually. Yeah, thanks for that one, Grace, by the way. Well, Vanessa's on that. Okay. When you came to the band, you brought, and thank you very much for that, by the way, the two songs that enable us to sort of squeak into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, those two songs being Somebody to Love and White Rabbit. Now, I first heard you do them with your band, The Great Society, and of course we were knocked out by the performances. And when we recorded them with the Airplane, we altered the arrangements. Now the question is, and I'll tell you, I have no recollection of how this came about. So I'm looking forward to this answer myself. The question is, How involved were you in the rewrites of Somebody to Love and White Rabbit when you joined the Airplane?
Not so much, because I just like bringing songs to the band and seeing what you guys are going to do with it. I just love that. So, no, I wasn't involved in. I just figured it's going to sound slightly different because it's Jack and Jorma playing and not Darby and Jerry, you know, or whoever. So not so much involved in it.
Well, but like I said, obviously I wasn't either because I have no recollection of how that happened. But you'll appreciate this. I was on one of these Little Feat sort of fan things down in Jamaica earlier this year, and Larry Campbell and his wife Teresa were there, and we do a bunch of playing together, and they go, "How would you like to play White Rabbit?" And Teresa can sing White Rabbit. I went, so give me a minute. So I went to my laptop, went to iTunes, downloaded White Rabbit so I could learn what I was doing. I had no idea what I was doing on that thing.
Oh, I do that a lot. I don't even remember. Like, I wrote a song. I'm just using this one as an example, but there's a whole bunch of them. A thing called the Panda Song. I could not tell you what key it's in, and I can only sing one of the verses.
Isn't that amazing?
I have no idea how the rest of it goes at all, and I wrote it.
Believe me.
It's really pathetic.
I hear you. Oh, here's a great question from our videographer, Andy Wallet. Nice question, Andy. And Andy's question is, how do you like your eggs?
Oh, scrambled.
Andy, where are you? You here? Oh, I see you. You got
That's
that?
That's why I like Jefferson Airplane.
Yeah, now you're talking. Oh, here's another dandy. What's your favorite TV show of all time?
TV show of all time.
Of all time.
Oh God,
I know,
I
it's
have
a
no
tough
idea. I don't have. It's the same as what's your favorite cut on your own record?
Yeah, I know.
It changes from year to year.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really into Falling Skies, conspiracy theory, aliens, automatic weapons. Perfect.
Yeah, I like Breaking Bad a lot, and there are documentaries that I really like.
Yeah, yeah, documentaries are always good. They purport to be true, don't they?
Well, you can ferret that out sometimes. You can see that the guy, whoever's making him, has an angle. Okay, if some right-winger's making a documentary, it's going to come from his point of view. So you can ferret out stuff from that. But just seeing and hearing the process of whatever documentary is, I really like that. I like to see, and when it's actual live footage, that's always good.
Yeah, live footage is really great.
Yes.
Let's see, here's something. I have to give you this question simply because I'm going to correct the author's grammar when he wrote it. And I know the guy that wrote it, and you know who you are too, and you will when I read this question. The question is, it's a good question. Is there a song you wished you had wrote? It's not wrote, it's written. Is there a question? I mean, is there a song you wished you had written and didn't?
Let's see. The first thing that comes to mind is Bolero, because obviously from White Rabbit, you know that I like either Ravel's Bolero or Spanish music in general.
Oh,
for some reason, Spanish music knocks me out.
Yeah, it's good stuff, that's for sure. And here's a de rigueur question that we all get all the time. I know you do gazillions of interviews, so I'm sure you've had this one before. It's the dreaded desert tropical island question. If you could have 3 desert island discs or records, what would they be?
Miles Davis, Sketches of Spain.
Good one.
Probably, and this sounds so weird, but Handel's Messiah.
Oh, nice.
And what? Oh God, probably Rolling Stones. So that's a mishmash.
That's good. That's good. Okay, let's see what else we got here. Oh, this is interesting. It's sort of a self-answering question, but Since you're not, since you're visually active right now, do you find it more fulfilling, or do you think about it in these terms at all, for you to express yourself musically or visually, and if so, why? And you can make this a short answer.
Okay,
Or a long one.
It's all the same to me. In
Good,
other words,
good.
the only art that I can't do because I'm a klutz is ballet. I wanted to be a ballet dancer when I was little, and the ballet dancer, the teacher said to my mother, well, maybe there are some of the other arts Grace might be interested in. You know, like, hey, take her out of this class, will you? She said, klutz. But I'll do anything. If they said, I'm sorry you can't paint, okay, I'll be a set designer. I'm sorry you can't be a set designer, okay, I'll write. I'm sorry you can't be, I'll just plow right through. I don't care which one it is. But I do have to be doing something, otherwise it makes me kind of crazy.
Here's a good one. If you had to limit your paintings to only one theme for the next 2 years, it's sort of a limiting thought, but let's go with that thought for a minute. What would your theme be?
It would be human being, the expression of on the face of a human being.
I like it. Good. Boy, Grace, you're ripping through these things here. Let me see what we got. I think we're good. Oh, this is a good one. Now, like I said, I'm so insensitive, I never really paid attention. You know, by the way, Jack and I both need to apologize to you and the rest of the great singers in our band for playing so loud all the time. Okay, I just had to say that.
Well,
and so
I think it was part of the time.
Yeah.
You know, the screaming hotshot lead guitar player.
I know.
And I have a very loud voice, so it didn't bother me as much as it might bother somebody else.
Well, this segues into the question. The question is, did you or do you have to warm up your voice before going on stage?
No, I just usually try to shut up for a while. I don't know why, but it just felt right to be quiet for, it could be 5 minutes, but just shut up for a while.
You know, because we have a lot of the artists coming in that have a lot of vocal range, and they're making burbling sounds and howling at the moon and all that kind of stuff. Now, Teresa Williams, Larry Campbell's wife, we were talking about this stuff. She's been in the game for a long time, and tell me if you agree with this. Like when you're young and you're learning how to do whatever it is you're learning how to do, whether it's singing, playing the guitar, being an artist, whatever, you work your ass off, and then through those middle years, because you've gotten good at it, and you still have the energy, you can kind of coast through that stuff. And then when you get on the other side of the mountain, you have to work your ass off and again just to kind of stay in the game. Do you agree with that?
I don't know, because I stopped I was 49, so I sort of stopped before I got on the other side. See, you're a musician. I'm a front guy, so
Right.
that looks kind of silly being 74 and singing songs that you wrote from the point of being a 25-year-old. So it even felt weird for me singing the songs I was singing when I was in my 40s.
Yeah, you should
It just felt weird. So it's different. You're actually a musician.
Really?
I'm just a fuck off who got lucky.
Now, I do get what you're saying, and here, and I have a remedy for this situation. Sing depressing songs about death. They never go out of style. I remember when I was just learning how to play, and if I had my guitar in my hands, I'd play a couple bars. But anyway, I used to play this old-timey bluegrassy song called Worried Man Blues. And I go, takes a worried man to sing a worried song. And then another chorus, I lay down with shackles on my feet. My dad would go, what do you know about worrying? What do you know about shackles? And I wanted to say, I'm a teenager, Dad. I know a lot about them. But wisely, I kept my mouth shut.
Yeah, I liked a lot of those songs. Working on the Chain Gang and
Right.
16 Tons and What Do You Get, Another Day Older and Deeper in Debt.
Right.
And I would sing those things and play the guitar, kind of folk music-y.
Right.
And I had no clue what it's like to work in a coal mine or a chain gang or any other damn thing.
Yeah, I think
So I sort of stopped singing songs that were largely from black writers,
Right.
because I thought I don't have any experience with that, so I'm way out of my element,
Yeah,
way out of my
I
depth.
think the only coal mine I ever went in was in Disney World or something like that. Well, go ahead.
I'm a little white guy from Palo Alto, for God's sake. So I'm fairly well educated, not great, but fairly well. So I write about the stuff I know.
Yep.
Yeah, you've never heard me write a song about physics, but then again, you've never heard anybody else write a song about physics either.
Nothing that made the charts anyway.
But now maybe Neil deGrasse Tyson has written a song about physics. I don't know.
Who knows? That's a good question. Well, by golly, Grace, I'm sure having a heck of a lot of fun. Do you have anything that you feel needs to be said? Something? Wait a minute. Here
Yeah,
comes,
persevere.
Oh, right. Yeah. Remember in The Outlaw Josie Wales, the Chief Dan George character, the Department of Indian Affairs, the Indians were always telling him to endeavor to persevere. I see my wife
That's right.
walking around. Got something to say, sweetie? What the? Boy, you can say that again. Well, my gosh, I think we've. Wait, let me double check, see if I've missed anything here.
Well, the thing is about having you ask questions or
Yes.
having you ferret out questions
Yes.
is that they are generally not the same as all of the thousands of other interviews that I've done.
Yeah.
So I thank you for that.
Well, my pleasure. I mean, you and I both know that, and I'm not patting myself on the back with this because I had a lot of help with all this stuff, but when you do an interview, the onus of success is not on the artist or the interviewee. It's always the interviewer. Like we just did something for Minnesota Public Radio, and the lady who was doing it was great. It's like every question was something you could hit out of the park. She made it sound so smart. If I was that smart, I would be that smart. Does that make any sense? Well, what do you think, Vanessa? How are we doing? Well, can you hear what she's saying, or? Well, she can't thank you enough. That's what Vanessa's saying. We're thrilled.
Oh, what a sweetie.
Thanks so much for taking the time out to do this with us. We love you to pieces. Everybody's had a great time. We wish you were here, and maybe someday I'll rent a train or something like that and bring you across the country.
Yeah,
and you can
no,
visit.
the only thing I need to go anywhere is, and they don't have them yet, because refrigeration is a large thing. You can heat your feet easily. They got batteries, socks,
Yeah.
but you can't make them cold. If you can figure out some shoes that are refrigerated, I'll go anywhere.
How about wait a minute now? Wait, I could see it in my mind's eye. I could see you like in the drawing room of some like Wild Wild West kind of train car, the gray slick train car, and you're sitting there in front of this table, and there's a brocade tablecloth, and there's crystal, and there's cut glass, and there's all kinds of fruit, kind of like the car in what's the name? Oh, the Hunger Games, and your feet are in this incredibly beautiful ice-filled chalice. What do you think about that?
Boy, you go right to the fantasy land fast and easy. I just wish Nikola Tesla was alive, and I'd say, oh, nice car, and by the way, could you make me some shoes?
Yeah, right. A little overpriced, but, well, hey, listen, it could happen. Well, listen, Grace, we love you to pieces. Thank you so much for being with us, and let's give Grace a huge round of applause.
Thank you, guys.
And one last thing, I do have to comment on the inventiveness of the various answering machine messages that you have. I thought the one where you just blew a huge raspberry, that was nice, but that was a little short. But the current one you have about Dick Pouch is just off the charts.
Well,
Yeah, you said he's
that's
out,
my
but he'll be back.
son-in-law.
He'll be back
and
in
he
again
was
soon.
a
Very nice.
Professional comedian.
Perfect.
So
We
he-
love it. Well,
He has
kudos.
the chops.
All right, Grace. Thank you so much.
Thank you too, Jorm.
Talk at you later, sis.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.